Stay more comfortable, more concealed, and in the stand longer with Osseo gear. Premium camouflage apparel created for bow hunters by bow hunters. Osseo's revolutionary patented camo patterns and innovative features are designed to keep whitetail bow hunters totally invisible and dead quiet. Elevate your game with Osseo. Visit asiogear.com and take 20% off your purchase with code TRUTH20. Mobile hunters, our buddies over at Tethered are always innovating to keep us more mobile and in the game when it counts. From the Tethered One Sticks, the Fast Pack, to the Ultra Lock saddle, Tethered is always designing to increase comfort and utility while reducing bulk, weight, and fiddle factor of mobile hunting gear. And now, they've outdone themselves yet again by creating the carbon fiber forged Predator CFX platform, the latest fully featured mobile saddle platform that raises the bar for what's possible in mobile hunting gear. Whether you're new to saddle hunting or an old tree climbing veteran, go to tetherednation.com for all your saddle hunting gear.
All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today we are coming to you from the state of Spuds.
Idaho.
Idaho. What?
Idaho's a made-up word.
It is a made-up word. So we'll get there in a second. But I'm in Idaho right now. You guys listen to the show. You know that I came out here to visit my buddy Wilson, do some elk hunting. And so our plan was to actually do this podcast while we were on the mountain or in the tents or whatever the case is. But Wilson and I went to bed every night at like 8 o'clock.
Got all the sleep.
It got all the sleep. And so we're actually in his garage. It's the night before I fly back to PA, hunt's over. But the reason why we say Idaho's a made-up word is because when I come to visit Wilson in the guest bedroom, there is a board that has fun facts of Idaho on it.
Yeah.
And one of the fun facts was Idaho is a made-up word, and I didn't know that was the case.
Yeah, and my wife was like, aren't all words made up?
Fair point.
It's a very good point.
Big brain on her. You know what I mean? It's like that's getting like out there, dude.
Yeah. But yeah, it was made up for the state. They just, I guess.
It's like Google. Just make it up.
Yeah.
Word means nothing.
Wikipedia.
Right? Yeah, that's cool. And then Napoleon Dynamite was also filmed here.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken, right?
Huckleberries are fruits.
Oh, we're going to have to edit that out. Wilson just sneezed. Just saw him. He had 2 fingers in his nose, trying to hold it in. It wasn't working.
Yeah, Napoleon Dynamite was filmed here, and huckleberries are our state fruit, and we're the largest producer of potatoes.
I think that one's the common knowledge.
Yeah.
Like everyone kind of knows that, right?
Yeah, except there's no potatoes where we live.
No. The huckleberry thing, though, is something I came to become a fan of. That was the first thing I asked you. I was like, hey, is there huckleberries where we're hunting this year?
Yeah, not where we were at this year.
No. But, so we'll just kind of jump right into the hunts. So, I flew out, got here like a week or so ago. Anyone who's not hunted, so Idaho has a wide array of types of habitat, like from north to south, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so anybody who's listening who may have hunted like southern Idaho, or someone who's hunted elk in southern Idaho, or whatever the case is, I've hunted that area of the country in Montana, just across the border, and it's very high desert-like, right, where it's a lot of glassing, super dry,
little pockets of timber,
small pockets of timber, a lot more elevation. There is the mountains are bigger, at least where I was at, as far as like where we were camping and where we were hunting. But when you get to North Idaho, it's like maybe you don't have quite the height in terms of elevation, but I feel like the steepness is more significant here. The valleys, like the amount of time that you cover a significant amount of vertical feet is more significant here than I feel like than what I experienced in general in that part of the southern part of Idaho / southern part of like Montana where I was at. Valleys are a lot more narrow. I feel like the wind's a little bit more fickle. And then the big kind of, I don't want to say game changer, but challenge is that you can't see very far. There's not a ton of glassing opportunities. And then even when you're close to critters, like you might know that they're there and there's not a thing you can do about it they might be 30 yards away from you, and you can't see them if you're in the timber hunting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's thick.
Yeah.
And if you're, if people are listening to this and they're from North Idaho, they're kind of laughing. They're like, yeah, of course. But when people hear like Western elk hunting, you kind of picture what you see in
Wyoming or
YouTube videos or Outdoor Channel, where it's just like you see the elk from far. That is not the case here.
Yeah.
There are places, don't get me wrong, there's places.
And we got into some of those places.
Yeah, where you can see, we glassed up plenty of elk where we can see them far away or whatever it may be, but the majority of our area is thick.
Yeah. And I even feel like, and again, I'm still new at this. This is only the third time that I've elk hunted. So it's not like I have like 10, 15 years experience of this, right? But I feel like the elk that we would see here, that we had seen here, it's like they might only be 900. Like we would glass them, and then maybe you'd throw like the rangefinder on them to say like, all right, well how far away are they really, right? And it might be like 850 yards or 900 yards, and they're like people are listening like, oh, 900 yards isn't that far, right?
Yeah, close that distance real quick,
right? But whenever it's 900 yards of a straight shot, but you've got two valleys in between you two, it's like it's not 900 yards of walking. It's like it's probably like an hour and a half hike to get there.
Yeah.
Where I feel like in Montana, where I was hunting at least, not in every case, but like if you glass something from like a fair distance away, like there was a pretty good way that you could close that distance relatively quickly.
Yeah,
you're not gonna be there in like a second, right? But like that would be an animal you could probably make a play on.
Yeah.
Right. This was one of those things where it's like, one, you were always going to lose visual.
Yep.
And so you just had to try to hope that you like almost predict where they were going to go, cut them off, which was almost near impossible because you would see them and then all of a sudden, poof, they would vanish. They'd be in like the thick stuff and you would never see them again.
Yeah.
And they could still be 30 yards from where you glassed them and you would just never know.
No idea.
Yeah. So that was the challenging so that's for people that are listening, that's the challenging part of hunting North Idaho is the terrain's rugged and it is just, I've hunted some thick areas like whitetail hunting and stuff like that. And this is by far the thickest stuff that I've ever hunted. And this year specifically, some of the stuff that we were in.
Yeah.
That we'll get to.
Yeah. When you first came out, or 2 years ago, I tried real hard to find an open-ish area. We were in the timber for sure, but moving was real easy.
It was.
Like the forest bottoms were really open and we could cruise, and it was steep, but it was a lot more open than this year.
Yeah. And this year we had a lot more open areas to glass this year that we didn't have so much previously.
Yeah.
But the moving outside of using like skidder trails, like in logged areas and stuff like that, if you got off those and into the timber, you're either in like an old cut, which is just like nothing but treetops and left behind branches and trees and whatever.
Chaos,
yeah. Or you're in old forest growth that was just Narnia thick and just steep, like cliff face type steep. Or you're in reprod, which was, knee-high brush and whatever with like a bunch of pine trees kind of planted in there that you were kind of having to weave in and out of.
Yeah.
That would probably be the easiest stuff to walk through.
Yeah.
By and large. But anyway, so I get out here on a Thursday
afternoon.
I changed my flights so I could get out here earlier. Landed at, I don't remember what time I landed, like 4 o'clock or something.
3 or something. Yeah.
And we scoot to Wilson's. And our original plan was like, we're going to get a good night's sleep. And then we're going to just bust out of here, get in the boat and get to the place that we were going to camp initially and start.
Yeah.
Right? And get kind of a late start because we were going to have to get there and drop off camp and dock the boat and all that stuff. But since I got here early, we kind of got everything packed and we were kind of like, you want to wait for tomorrow morning or you just want to go? We were like, well, let's just go. Yeah. And so that was what we did.
Well, and the week prior to you getting here, elk were fired up in the mornings. Like a lot of people were killing bulls. A lot of people were bugling bulls in. And it was a little hectic where like, okay, it's on. Like we got to go. We got to get after him.
Yeah.
And I was hopeful for this week that we were going to get the midday bugling, and we are going to get more chasing and being able to get like screaming bulls.
Mm-hmm.
And that just wasn't
Right.
we can get to that, but
Yeah. So we jump in the boat and we get to the first spot. The first spot's awesome.
yeah.
The setup of it is killer. It's, we had the boat in. You describe the topography because you'll describe it better than me because, I walked it, but, like, I haven't studied it near as much. And you spent a ton of time at this place,
I know
like,
this
dialing it.
place really well. And it's a spot that, access-wise, there's only one real easy-ish way to get in, and not a lot of people would do it, and not a lot of people, whether they knew about it or didn't know about it, people weren't doing it.
Right.
So I've been in there this will be my second season in there. I've never seen, I saw one person in there once rifle hunting, and they got in the same way, and they were like shocked. They're like, I've never seen anyone in here.
Mm-hmm.
It's landlocked by ranches, and it's just a really cool spot. And then we get in there, and it's steep.
And it's got a bunch of different topographies, too. Like,
Yeah.
And just terrain or habitat. It's like there's swamp.
Yep.
There's, like, steep ridges.
Yep.
Deep valleys.
Yeah.
And then once you get on top, there is some, like, access because it's been logged. And so you can, once you kind of make the initial climb out of, like, the hole,
Yep.
right, you can kind of get around pretty
You have
quick.
the run of the mill of the drainages from the old skidder trails that are pretty open.
Which makes it nice because you can bebop
Yep.
the different drainages, bugle them.
Yeah.
And
And there, if you glass a bowl on 2 ridges over, you can be to it with, you can be in the game in less than 30 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
And so we scouted it.
And you were in there last year, and you had that was like, so anyone who listened to the episode that you and I did together previously,
Yeah.
you talked about your encounters in there and, like, the Magnum bull and
Yeah, we shot a bull and we didn't recover him, which is heartbreaking, but it's just it was
part of the
they're
game.
tough animals,
Yep.
and I've come to, I don't know, I'm not okay with it. Like, it still sucks that he lost a bull, but it's like, it's the reality.
Yep.
Just 2 days ago, we had a buddy, he shot his first elk and he never found it.
Yep.
And I finally, I get it now. I'm like, yeah, I've been there. I understand.
Yeah.
It's crappy, but when we went to look for that bull the next day, we had 3 bulls screaming,
Mm-hmm.
and one that, I could have shot another bull that next day, but I was so dialed in on finding that bull. So we scouted it 3 weeks before you came out, put eyes on different bulls, heard a bull bugle, and I was like, that's it. We're out of here. Let's get out.
Mm.
And then, so we go in there and
Start making the climb, and off the rip, we were feeling pretty good.
bull bugles. And in there, if a bull bugles, I don't even question if it's a human or not, because that's what you deal with a lot in our area. If you hear a bugle, you have to assess, is it an actual elk or is it a dude?
Yeah.
And so, but
And some are easier to distinguish than others.
some you're like, that is definitely a dude.
Right.
Others, it's a little bit difficult, but in here, I've never quit. If I hear a bugle, it's a bull, and we're chasing it. So we start chasing this bull. He's working down a ridge. We're working up towards him. And now that I look back, I was like, we probably could have. I just wasn't thinking that it was a dude. We come up the hill. He bugles.
Well, there were 2 different bugles. One was definitely a bull.
There was definitely a bull in there.
Yeah.
Because we heard some cows. There's some cows right below us. And the wind started to switch, so we're like kind of scrambling. Like, we got to drop. In my head, I'm like, we need to drop back down the hill because the thermals, we were getting up to a ridge, and that ridge was in the sun. And as soon as we got up there, our thermals were sucking right towards the bull. So we're like scrambling, like, because there's a bunch of dudes in there with us.
Yeah.
So we're like, we need to go around the corner. And in my head, I'm like, we need to drop back down because we're going to be back in the thermal pool and we'll be out of his wind, and he's already coming. We'll just call him in.
Right.
And I look to my left, and there's this dude crouched behind a bush, trembling, because he hears these 4 dudes. We sound like a herd of elk coming through the woods.
Yep.
And he was shaking at his core.
Yeah.
I was like, I asked him, I said, did you draw? And he's like, no. He was for sure drawn.
Right. Yeah.
we about caught an arrow coming around that corner.
Yeah, we did.
So I was shocked, like,
Yeah.
and I was crushed because I had been waiting for this spot was going to be sweet. We were going to kill a bull in there. I'm like, okay, one guy in here, that's not fine. He goes and gets his e-bike.
Which is illegal in this area.
Yeah, yeah, and that's very debatable. Some people will be like, well, it's a bike and it's pedal assisted, so it's not technically motorized, but Fish and Game, it's going back and forth, but it's a motorized vehicle, and like this sign, this area is like, no, you can't do it.
Right.
And he was very courteous. He was
Hey,
like,
he's
hey,
fine. Yeah,
he was nice. He was like, hey, you guys are in here. Clearly, you hiked into here. He didn't know how we got in there. He's like, so I'm going to get out of here. I was like, great. And then I said, how did you get an e-bike in here?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, they cut in a road. So I didn't have any idea about this, but they put an access road in. And so now you can, I think we looked at the map and it was 4 or 5 miles on an e-bike. And so he cruised his e-bike back in there. I was like, no big deal. It's a huge area, so I'm not worried about it. So he said, let's hit the trail and start surfing these drainages. And 30 minutes later, here comes another guy around the corner on his e-bike, been road bugling off his e-bike. And I was like, wow, 2 dudes here. And so I said, well, let's bop over to the far drainage where we shot that bull last year. That was like the money spot. Like if we hadn't gotten into him, we're going to get into one over there.
And so the original plan when we got into this area or into this piece was that we were going to kind of take it easy the first day, survey the land, see if we got the bull fired up, and not put on a ton of miles the first day.
Yeah.
Not walk the entire thing, essentially, right?
Yeah. And so at this point, I'm like, there's people in here. We need to go and check to see if there's anybody else in here and scoot around the top. Because if this place is loaded up with people and they're just getting pressured, we need to move spots.
Yeah.
And so we hiked to where I'm like, there's going to be nobody back here. And the total loop, I think, if you just do the full loop, I think is like 13-ish miles.
Yeah.
And like 2,600 feet of vert up. And we get to the spot. We're about to crest and hit this ridge line where it goes out to this drainage. We come around the corner and there's a tent.
And two dudes
taking a nap.
Yeah.
And they woke up and they're like, whoa, where did you guys come from? We're like, where did you come from?
Those poor fellas bushwhacked from the bottom all the way up that ridge. Dude.
Because they tried to get in. They came in a way that
is crazy.
Yeah, I would never have come in, but they came to the gate and there was a bunch of trucks parked there because people were e-biking in.
Yep.
And so they could have parked there and just walked in, but they decided to come up the nastiest drainage. So props to them. Like, good on you.
Yeah, they put in some work.
Yeah. And they're like, yeah, we're planning on hunting this drainage back here. We've never been back here. I was like, oh, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
So,
so basically, we started our descent at that point. We spent the rest of the afternoon there listening.
Yeah.
We did some glassing, see if we weren't going to throw the whole hunt away.
Yeah, we were nice. Those guys were like, hey, we're going to go hunt out this ridge, and then we're going to get out of here. Because they clearly put in the work, and I want to give them that respect. Like, hey, you were here. That's all good. Even though in my head, I was furious. It's no one's fault. Like, I'm not. It's public land. You can be there.
Yeah.
But it was finally a spot that I found that was just really unpressured, and bulls would do what wild bulls should do.
Yeah.
And, so we bebopped back to the camp, and we saw moose, and
I saw a couple moose.
And then it was like back to the drawing board, erase all the plans. And because I had some backup spots, but I didn't think it was going to be like day one we were going to be moving.
Yeah. So we basically boogied out of there and got back to camp. So at that point, we'd heard one bull so far because one was the dude, one was a bull.
Yeah.
The bull that we were chasing, and that bull left, and then we were chasing the dude that fooled us.
Yeah.
And then we got back to camp, and you and I literally tore down the tent because we used the big tent that first night and just slept in that one together. And then we jumped in the boat, got back to the truck, And then we basically boogied with Justin
Yep.
to a spot that he's hunted.
Yeah, he
over
killed
the
a
years.
bull. He's been hunting this spot for a while. He's like, hey, I got a day and a half. Let's go.
Yeah, because this was on Friday.
Friday.
Right? And he was hunting Saturday and half
Yeah.
of Sunday. Then he had to get back to
Yeah.
work on Monday.
So he's like, hey, let's bop into my spot and we will, then we can have time to game plan or whatever and go. And so this is a walk-in spot. When I say walk-in, every spot's walk-in, but like, you know, it's like camp by the gate and
Yeah.
every day just hike on in.
Yep.
And
The first day we glassed some elk from that slash
bumped,
pile.
Yeah, we bumped a little.
So
you
just
know,
a little back up for a second. So this area, like Wilson was mentioning, is walk-in. All of it is. But to get to where, I mean, you can get into elk like off the rip.
Yeah.
You know, but it's uphill at the beginning, right? And then it's a lot of just following skidder trails and like hitting like different clear cuts and like drainages and stuff like that, and bugling and trying to strike something up and then make a move or whatever. And you're in the middle of nowhere, so it's like you could. I mean, we've seen elk run the roads, like when we were glassing, just use the roads to get around, and there's elk tracks all over the place.
Yeah.
So the place has elk in it. So anyway, I just wanted to give people like the lay of the land. So it's a lot of clear cut. That's happening in
it's
this area,
timber.
like timbering.
It's logged land, so it's like it kind of looks like a checkerboard where like there'll be a checkerboard section that has timber in it, and then there'll be a section that's been logged, and it's kind of just checkered. And these elk just bop from, you know, the what we would call like the dark timber, like old growth timber, into the clear cuts, into the reprod, like the replant. So they log and then they'll replant trees, and so they'll feed through that, and so they're all over the place. There's no
like pattern.
There's no pattern. They go from this timber patch and they feed, and then they bed over here, and anyone who elk hunts knows like sometimes elk are patternable if they have a confined habitat.
Right.
So like, oh, this is where they bed.
Or they have limited bedding.
Yeah, and they'll feed around that, but then they have limited bedding, so it's here or here, this ridge or this ridge. Here, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And
it's like for people back east, it's not the same, but like you think of it in the sense of trying to hunt mature bucks in the big woods.
Yeah.
Where they have bedding opportunities galore, and there's no agriculture, so they're just browsing for the most part, you know, eating browse, and the browse is everywhere.
Yep.
Like every turn.
in this place, you can bring side-by-sides or four-wheelers in.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And so
A lot of trying to discern when you hear a bugle. Is it a guy or is it...
every time you hear a bugle, it is, let's wait till he bugles again.
Yeah.
You
How
know?
soon does he bugle again? What's the second cadence? that
Yeah,
he's
was it
using?
the same bugle? Did he try to chuckle?
Is it from the same exact spot?
Yeah,
he
is it on a
moving?
road? You know,
That
all
was the
this
one
stuff.
thing you started doing right off the rip that I figured out right away. Was that as soon as we would hear a bugle, you would look at the map and see, is there a road close to where that bugle
Yeah.
came from? Because if so, then we need to kind of pause and we need to hear that bugle a couple
Yeah.
more times before we are going to make any move on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know there's spots where you're going to bugle from. Like if you're going to bugle down into a drainage or whatnot, you're going to get to a certain spot and then you're going to let one rip.
Right.
And then you look at the map and be like, there's a dude right where I would bugle at, bugling from the road
Yeah.
down into that drainage.
And when he says road, it's a skidder trail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, yeah, the logging trails that machines go on. But the topography, you could bugle straight in front of you, and that bugle will hit that drainage and echo a mile to the left.
Yeah.
And so when you hear a bugle, it's very difficult because everything's so tight. It's very difficult to pinpoint where that bugle came from.
And that little nugget right there is important when we get to like the next section.
Oh, yeah.
of the
Yeah.
of the hunt, because there is a particular there was a particular hunt that occurred multiple days in a row, and this is kind of why.
Yeah. So we bumped a little herd of cows just walking on the road. We looked to our left and we saw some cows, and I think maybe there might have been a bull. Who knows? But they bopped in the timber and they were gone. Then we glassed some elk real far away. That was the end of the day.
Yeah.
It was a good day. We saw elk. We saw lots of sign. We had some hope. Well, the next day we go out. We got to a spot where we could sit down and just get some information, see if we can glass any elk moving from some timber to a clear cut, who knows what. And we heard a bugle in the middle of
it was like 8:30 or something.
Yeah. But it was in the mid. There's no road. It's just in the middle of this, replanted area, old clear cut that's just been planted, and but this bull bugled and he chuckled. And chuckles is like typically a dead giveaway if it's a human or not, because chuckles are harder to do on a bugle tube for just the guys. I practice a lot and I'm not good at it. If I do it, people go, "Oh yeah, that's a dude."
Right.
And this one was good. You were like, "That's a bull." I didn't even think twice.
And I said, like, when I heard it, even the bugle, when I heard it, I said, this one has like, this was like my audio background maybe coming through where I was like, it has a roundness and a warmth to it. I was like, the other ones I've heard haven't had, especially when he did the chuckle. I was like, it felt round.
Yeah.
It didn't feel flat, like someone EQ'd all the like natural frequencies out of it.
Yeah, pushed all the buttons to the top.
Yeah.
But so we just packed our stuff up and the hunt was on for that bull. That was sweet because we got our wind right, closed the distance. He was answering cow calls, and so when you're hunting, when you're getting into an elk, you got to test the waters of like, what is he answering to and what is he not answering to. And every time I would cow call, he would let one rip right off the bat.
Yeah.
But then he would go 100 yards.
Yeah.
And then we would close the distance, cow call, he would answer right away and then go away. And then at one point he was less than 100 yards.
Yeah, he was inside 80, I would say.
Yeah. And we had really good cover, so we bounced from tree to tree to tree, and we hit, I don't know if he was chuckling and pissing on himself or something, but we hit this pocket where it was like the strongest elk smell I've ever had in my life, and I was like, you knocked an arrow.
Yep.
I cow called, and he bugled down the edge of the drainage.
In the drainage. Yeah.
And now we're really far from where we were camping.
Yeah.
And so he's down in the bottom of this drainage. I cow call, and he answered every time. And then he started moving up the other side of the drainage. Yeah. And now he's out of the game. Like, we're not going to catch him. It's steep.
Yeah, we got to go. That drainage is stupid steep.
Yeah.
There's no way we were getting down that drainage and up the other side.
Yeah.
He was going to be in Canada by the time we got over there.
Oh, geez, yeah. So, and then that was the end of that day because we had to, Justin, our buddy, had to go, and it was his spot, so we pulled out. And, he's like, hey, you guys want to keep chasing this bull, keep chasing it. But I had a plan B. I had a spot that I really wanted to check out. And it's...
Watch your microphone. It's hitting your beard a little bit, or pull it down a little bit. There you go.
Justin had to go, and I had a spot I really wanted to check out. Went in there 2 weekends before with a buddy, and it's a unit. Not a lot of people hunt. There's a lower density of elk, but a lot less pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And
rightly so, because that place is giant.
Yeah, it's giant. Predators, a lot more predators, and very little access.
Yeah.
And so there is some, Forest Service roads that you can go on, but it's, I think we drove 40 some miles on a Forest Service road, and there's no other road. So it's not like you can rip an ATV down into a drainage and park it and walk to a spot. It's just not, you're not doing it. And so we drove up there, we glassed. a elk,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just shut off. No bugles.
Yep.
It was dead.
Yeah.
And so what I've learned is you can't get married to a spot. Like, just because it looks like there should be elk there doesn't mean there's going to be elk there.
And it was one that we knew the least, or that I don't know anything about anything out here. Any of these pieces that I've never scouted anyway, but it was a spot that you probably knew the least about.
Yeah.
As far as like, we were just kind of going, if we can strike one up, if we can glass one from where because we set up our camp, we were like in a great camp spot because we were able to glass a ton.
Yep.
We were like, let's just spend the evening glassing and see if we can see elk. And if we see a bull that we can make a move on in the morning, then we'll make a move on him. Or if we get up in the morning and we bugle or glass something and we can make a play in the morning on something that we see go bed, then we'll do that.
Yeah.
But outside of that, we were like, we're not going to spend days here trying to relearn. Like, it's the old adage, like what we basically got back to was, don't leave elk to find elk.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew where there was elk, and we knew where there was one in particular that we thought we could chase consistently, or, try to get a game plan to chase him. And so, we just weren't going to spend a lot of time somewhere where we had to kind of start all over again.
Yeah. So we packed up camp again.
There's a theme here.
Yes. And zipped over, not to the same spot, but
The backside
clear on the other side
of the mountain.
Yeah.
But it was on the opposite side of where that drainage was, where we had that bull go down in.
Yeah.
Where he was chuckling and where we had the best encounter.
Yeah. No, and so then we hiked in, brought our camp in with us, and set up camp and just went to work on this bull.
Yeah.
Like, it was funny because you get two whitetail guys trying to create strategies on this elk, and I was super hopeful that was going to work, and we kind of got focused on this one bull because
he was vocal.
He was vocal in the morning, but very little,
yeah.
and he just let us know he was there.
He gave us just enough to keep us interested
somewhere in that drainage, and it was just enough to keep us interested. And it was, man, I would say it's not easy, but the access was easy, but closing the distance was
hard. Yeah. Because so we had a really good glassing vantage point. Like, if we hiked, whatever it was, 5 or 10 minutes from camp, we could get to a really good glassing vantage point. And so our first plan that first night was, we had left. It had been a day since so we hadn't seen or heard the bull, like, on, I guess it was Monday.
Yeah.
So this was now Tuesday. So we're like, let's just get there and glass in the morning, and maybe we see an elk we want to chase.
Yep.
Or we hear bugles we want to chase.
Yep.
Fingers crossed, dude is still using that drainage, and he bugles, and we get a bead on him, and then we can start to make a game plan.
Yeah.
Right. And so we did that, and we managed, like, he went quiet, and we lost, like, his location, because before we could try to make a move and get close enough, we lost, he wasn't talking anymore.
And we didn't want to blow him out.
No, because we knew where he was at, because we were like,
the same thing.
Yeah, we were like, if he's there again today, chances are this is his little kingdom he's going to want to use, and so if we don't do anything stupid, we should have a chance to, like, have multiple plays at this bull. And so the next day we made a game plan. We were like, you know what? Let's get to the glassing vantage point again. We'll glass in the morning, and then we'll wait for him to bugle, make sure he's still in drainage. Because the thing is, like, to get to that bottom of that drainage, it was like 2.5 miles to get there. Downhill, which doesn't sound bad, but then it's 2.5 miles all uphill on the way back out.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's, uphill and downhill it's easy to say, but it's hard to explain.
Yeah. It's a hike.
Downhill.
Yeah. It's like getting down to that drainage and getting back out is half a day. Like, easy.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that would be like
with light loads.
Yeah. So the next day we get up. Our plan was, if we hear him bugle and he confirms he's there, we're going to start diving toward the bottom. But we're going to get to a point to where we can cut up through the timber, get on top where there's a clear cut. Now we're above him. We're going to sit there and we'll wait until the thermals switch. When they start blowing up the mountain, then we can start diving down, because now we're pretty much directly above him. Only we're still pretty far away.
Yeah.
But now we've got the thermals, and he should be coming our way.
Yeah.
As we're making our way toward him, and now we have the thermal advantage, right? And so we get up in the morning, and it is just so freaking foggy.
Yeah, I couldn't see 10 feet.
No, we get out of our tents, and we got our headlamps on, and you can't see 2 feet in front of you because like there's so much mist in your
It was like it poured rain, but it didn't rain and drop.
Yeah. And so we finally, get some coffee, make our way to the place we want to get to. He rips off. We're like, all right, let's move. We're like, we knew it was probably going to be a little later in the day that thermals were going to switch just because of the cloud cover and the moisture in the air and stuff. So we get down to where we want to get to. We bushwhack through the timber to get up to that cut, and it just took forever. Like the thermals were typically switching around like 10 o'clock, like ish, roughly, depending on what side of the drainage or mountain you were on, if it was getting sun or whatever. We ended up having to sit there till like noon to wait for the thermals to switch.
Yeah, it was brutal.
And then we finally got him to switch. We started making our way down. He bugled late again that day.
Yeah.
And then we had another bugle off to our right that we paused for like a quick second, and we were like, should we chase that bugle, or should we still kind of go after the bull we've been going after? And you and I were both like, we've been playing this game with this bull. That's like, this is why we came here. Yeah. This is why we came to this drainage. Let's just make our way down.
Let's kill this bull.
So we make our way down, and he totally bebops us and doesn't make another sound. We don't hear him. We don't see him. Like nothing.
Yeah.
But we got into a real elky spot.
Yeah.
With just a ton of sign, and so he's clearly using that area. We just aren't sure how he's getting in and out of it.
And I realized pretty quickly that we weren't going to be in any sort of screaming matches with anything. And so we were soft cow calls and, call and set up and wait and give the elk time to move, because they're loud animals, but as we experienced, they can be sneaky quiet ghosts in the woods.
Yeah. It's crazy how that size of animal can just sound like they don't even exist, and they're like 15 yards from you.
Yep. Because that next day we said, let's just get all the way down there and get as close as we can safely. And that way when he bugles, we're going to be right on top of him quick.
Yep.
He bugled, I think, on our way down to him.
Mm-hmm.
So then
he just did it like, was that the day he just did the like bed bugle?
Yeah,
as we
something
were
like
over there?
his bed. It was just like a real kind of a high pitched, just
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It was like, meow.
Yeah, almost like an elongated cow call, but
He was almost like a yawn. It's like, how would it maybe think of it as like, hey, he's just yawning.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he wasn't yawning, but
he might have been.
Maybe.
Like, I'm tired of you guys.
Yeah, leave me alone.
Leave me alone. And then he went silent, and so we're sitting on the upside of this logging road, and we had cow called probably 30, 40 minutes before, and we were just sitting there pondering.
We were sitting there basically waiting for him to make one, because we were so close to where we knew he was spending time.
Yeah.
That we were like, we just need him to, like, either make that bed bugle one more time. Like, we don't need much. We just need something to tell us where he's at. And
so
then
that we can close the distance. And
yeah.
Because of the thermals are so finicky there, if you drop into that drainage in the wrong spot, you're just going to blow them out with your wind.
Yep.
And you're going to be done before you even get there.
Yep.
And so where he bugled was very important, because if we could figure out where he was, that meant we could figure out if we needed to come in above him or below him.
Yep.
And so we're sitting there just kind of whispering, talking back and forth very quietly. And then all of a sudden, I mean, we're on the upside of this logging road, and then it's flat on the road and then drops straight down.
Into a drainage.
Into the drainage.
That drainage, that drop is almost like cliff face type drop, to where you can't see like anything.
That sucker walked right up the hill, came probably within 10 yards of the top of the...
Any closer, we would have saw that we would have seen the top of his antlers.
The drainage, and whether the wind swirled or what, but all we heard was this big elk just swirl around and go trampling down the hill. And we looked at each other with my hands were over my face. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And we couldn't have done anything different.
No, there was
we called, we were set up in a good spot. Like I'm always very aware of like, if we're going to stop, we need to be stopped and set up in a place that if a bull walks up on us, we're not just standing out in the open, you know? And so we were, and yeah, I think he caught our wind or something. It was swirling at the top there. And he just ran out of our lives.
He had to, because I mean, he certainly didn't see us.
No.
You know, and he didn't hear us.
Nope.
So
that was pretty defeating. Yeah. But the night before, we had glassed a herd of elk,
yeah,
a couple cows, and a small spike and this mega spike, you know.
Dude, that mega spike was ridiculous.
Like, he probably had an inside spread of 30 inches maybe. Yeah. I mean, he was giant. Yeah. And, you know, we're not on I've never killed, brought home an elk that I've shot.
Right.
And you're going to shoot a legal bull, so we can shoot a spike. So we're like, hey, we're going to go set up on, see if these elk come back out. So we actually dropped down into the drainage.
It was terrible.
In my brain, I'm like, it's easy. We'll just bop down.
Oh, I was too. Like, I was like looking at it, like, I was like, this doesn't look too bad. Like, we'll be across it in no time.
Yeah. It took some time.
Yeah. It took some time. The climb down always isn't too bad. Like, getting to the bottom was like, okay, this isn't too bad. And you look up and you're like, oh, man.
My favorite phrase to say here in Idaho is we'll bop over there, because it just makes it sound way easier. It really is. Like, hey, it's better than saying, like, hey, do you want to hike over there? Or like,
you want to climb this?
You like climb up that hill? I'm like, let's just bop up this thing.
Bop up.
Bop. We're there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I put in a lot of work before the elk season. I felt great. My legs still feel great, even though we did a lot of, I don't know if we all added it up yet, but it's kind of like a participation trophy of like, no one cares.
Yeah.
But we got over there in hopes that maybe these elk were going to do the same thing 2 nights in a row, because they haven't been vocal, and there's nothing.
Yeah. If the theme was like, whenever we showed up somewhere, like the elk decided to be somewhere else, or just out of our range, or just behind some trees, or whatever the case is. And so that was a long day of a lot of hiking. And was that the last day that we were there? Was that yesterday?
That was the last night, because then we said, we're going to give that bull one more go.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We're going to give him one shot.
Yep.
And
we heard him.
When that elk came up the ridge and spun around and went down the hill, backtrack a little bit, we were standing there like in kind of disbelief, and way down, like, it'd been a couple minutes by this point, and like way down the drainage, he just gave us a little bugle.
Yeah.
And he was like,
see ya, suckers.
See ya. Nice try. Better luck next time.
Right? Yeah, that was pretty defeating.
And that's when we were like, we're out of here.
Yeah.
So then we hunted him. We woke up in the morning.
Bombed all the way down to the bottom.
All the way down to the bottom again. And we were in his zone. We were in his comfort zone where he's been.
We heard him again.
But
he only gave us one bugle this time.
And that was the one where, because if you can kind of have a mental picture here, you got a long drainage, and let's just say it goes north to south. Well, then on the east and west sides, there's like 5 drainages on each side that come in, but they're big rounded, like there's big round knobs in them. So if he's in one of those little pockets and he bugles, it just bounces off, and you're like, I have no.
Yeah, so we knew what drainage, he'd been in the same drainage all the time, but like our perpetual challenge was figuring out like exactly where he was. When I say exactly, it's within reason.
Yes.
So what you said earlier, which is like, so we know, are we coming in above him, or are we coming in below him?
Yes.
Right. And that was key, because that would somewhat be dictated by like the time of day that it was too, and like how we were going to come in. You know?
And a lot, elk hunting is a lot of like, you close the distance, you put the pressure on them, and you make them uncomfortable, and they're either going to play the game or not going to play the game.
Yeah.
But if you, and I've experienced this, you try to just close the distance, put the pressure on them, and your wind's wrong, the jig is up before you even get into their zone.
Yep.
And it's just a giant waste of time.
Yeah.
Like I just hiked.
That's the one thing with this. It's, is how, wind is obviously very important when we hunt whitetails, but you have to almost, like when you hunt whitetails, you're like, I'm going to my setup, wherever I'm setting up at.
Yeah.
And you hunt that area based on the wind, which the wind may switch to the middle of the day, and so you might hunt the evening or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like you're probably not hunting at all until you go into to make that hunt, or maybe you're out scouting or whatever the case is, right? But this is like you're making your plan. Like you got to be in the area to like jump on it whenever like the conditions get right for you to make the move.
Yeah, and you go around one bend and the wind, it's totally different.
Yeah, and so then it's like, oh, we got to back up.
Yeah,
Wind's not
we
right
backed
yet.
up
You know what I
quite a
mean?
few
It's like, yeah.
We dropped into that drain. We were dropping halfway down, and we got halfway down, and we were like, back out.
Back out.
Get out of here quick.
Yeah, it's a very dynamic hunt, not just because you're moving and burning boot leather a lot, but it's like you have to constantly be paying attention to what the wind's doing, because you're not in just a tree hunting a spot that's going to have the consistent wind, whatever that wind happens to be that day, based on what the thermals are doing there and the wind current and all that stuff. It's every time you go around a bend or you gain elevation or whatever the case is, like what the wind is doing can change and often does.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly playing cat and mouse, not just with the elk, but you're playing cat and mouse with the wind at the same time.
And when they're not fired up in the sense of like just
ripping
being
bugles.
stupid, you have to play this cat and mouse game, and it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah. So we bombed down there that day. He gave us a little like, hey, I'm over here.
Kind of.
Yeah. And it wasn't enough for us to really 100% figure out where he was at. And then he just never made another peep. And so we could have sat there the rest of the day waiting for him to make a noise, or we could have bombed into the bottom and him not be there. And so we were like, you know what? He beat us at that point. We were like, we have basically a day left, right?
Yeah.
So we have that evening and this morning, essentially.
And we had what was nice is that whole week, no other pressure.
Yeah.
I think we saw one guy.
Well,
Can you
yeah.
tell that
So
story?
yeah. So when we're getting ready to leave, we rip off one more bugle. We're like, we're gonna bugle at him one more time, see if we can get him to rip off. And if he does, then maybe we'll make a plan. If not, then we're just getting out of here, and then we're gonna make a plan for whatever we're gonna do this evening and what we're gonna do for tomorrow morning. And so we rip off a bugle. Wilson rips off a bugle. We don't hear anything. We hear a bugle from behind us, and immediately we both look at each other and we're like, "That's a dude."
That's a dude.
And
we'd already bugled in the morning a couple times, like, and cow called and just sound checked a couple stuff. And so this guy had probably heard us from the road,
yeah.
which is,
Well, it definitely did based on where it was.
yeah, which is pretty far away.
Yeah.
But he would have definitely heard us. It was a clear day, no clouds. Like he would have for sure heard me. So I feel bad for him. He hiked so far up and over this like mini mountain, but then by the time he was probably at the top, we were already scooting out the trail the other way,
Yeah.
and we were I was cow calling.
Call on. We ripped a couple bugles along the way.
It's like,
to see
hey,
if we could-
we're on our way out. Let's check this. See if there's a bull that just moved in the area that gets fired up or whatever.
right.
We get back to the tents, and we were a little ahead of schedule, so we're like, let's make a coffee.
Let's make a coffee. Let's pull our tents out of where we had them and put them out in the sun so they like dry off a little bit.
Yeah, there's a bunch
we were
of
soaked
dew.
wet because we just hiked out.
Yeah, the dew was all, and we bombed up that. So, like, I was drenched in sweat, and
So we're shirtless.
tents are sitting on this gravel path. Kind of stuff is everywhere. It looks like a yard sale. We're shirtless, sitting on these two log rounds that we found in a slash pile, drinking coffee.
Using them as chairs to drink coffee in.
Looks real weird. And this guy comes around the corner to just two shirtless dudes in the middle of nowhere,
Place where you would not expect to see two shirtless dudes.
sitting pretty close, drinking coffee
Right.
at like 11 o'clock in the day. So if you're listening to this, like, we're nice guys.
Yeah.
We slept in separate tents.
Yeah. So our running joke was like, this guy comes around the corner, sees that, and then, Wilson's like, hey, how you doing? And the guy's just like, hey.
Yeah,
And just
didn't
like
even
keeps
stop and didn't even break stride. He just came around the corner, saw us, had this giant look of disgust, like, oh, I was not chasing
an elk.
elk.
I was chasing two shirtless dudes around the mountain.
And I just can't imagine him going home. And his wife's like, "How was your hunt?" He's like, "You'll never guess what I saw in the middle of the woods."
There were two homosexuals.
Homosexuals. Because like where we were set, like our knees were almost touching.
Yeah.
On these chairs.
We were a little close.
Oh man. Hey. Whatever. Making memories for other people.
That's right. That's right. So that was the end of that. So we gathered all of our stuff, and we were where did we go last night? What did we do? Oh, we went to this other place.
Yeah. So I had my plan C that like if my first spot was a bust and my second spot was a bust, like we're gonna go here and it's a steep, dark. Everything's dark timber. And there's elk in there. We're just going to see if they're fired up. They're not terrible to hunt in there because they're fired up.
Right.
They're fired up. So we're going to go check it out. So we get there. We set up camp. Chilled for a little bit.
And we have cell service in this spot.
Yeah, we have cell service in this spot. So I think it was like 3:30, 3:40. We're like, all right, we're going to get in the woods. We hike out this ridge. It wasn't bad. I think we went a mile.
It's like a little mile and a half, something like that. Yeah.
Sit down and I didn't really have a good feeling about the spot. I'm like,
yeah. It was a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we get a text from my buddy Hunter, and he's like, almost shot a 5x6 this morning, screaming. He was by himself. He's like, I need another guy in there.
Yeah, because he got kind of caught, like holding the bag a little bit because he was calling, and like bull came in, and by the time he realized the bull was on him, like he couldn't get drawn.
Yeah, and he couldn't move spots, and like elk can pinpoint you. Like if you bugle from a spot, they know they're gonna come
check that spot.
right.
Like, hey, is there an elk right there?
Yep. Yeah. And so he got caught, and they moved off, and then a spike.
Well, when we say he got caught, he just couldn't get drawn. The elk didn't blow out of there.
Yeah,
or
no,
whatever.
Yeah, they didn't bust. They didn't catch his wind or anything. And he went back and forth with this bull for a while. Like it circled him, and he had a couple opportunities, but it's hard when you're by yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's people that do it by themselves all the time, but it's difficult. And so he was like, do you guys want to come into my spot? And this is like his spot.
It's by his house, close to his house, relatively close to his house. It's a place he's hunted
Far
for.
from his house.
Oh, what? Well, yeah, far from his house.
Yeah.
He's hunted this place for like a little while. You know, he's got some stuff dialed in that area.
And I was like, yeah, if you got, he's like, you guys come in here, let's get Clint a bull.
Yeah.
And so I'm talking to him on the phone. I was like, we have half a day because.
Yeah, we have Friday morning.
Yep. And because we got to get back, you got to get stuff packed up because you leave in the morning.
Yep.
And the reality is if you shoot a bull, it's a lot. We gotta set a hard stop, right?
Yeah.
And he's been coming in from the top at this place,
and it is brutal from the top.
Brutal from the top. I mean, I want to say it's probably, if without looking at the map, 3/4 of a mile and 2,300 feet of.
It's 23 or 2,400 feet of vert.
Yeah, it's straight up and down.
Yeah.
But Hunter is a beast,
yes.
And
that dude just goes.
Yeah. I'm always like, I can keep up with him. And then when we stop, I'm like, yeah, I kept up with him. And he's just having a normal conversation. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I can move pretty good in the mountains, but I'm with Hunter. I'm like, I feel like I should be, I don't know. It's rough.
Yeah.
So we pack up camp, which we didn't even camp at.
Yeah. We literally put our tents out at that place, went and hiked down that ridge. Hunter called and said, hey, you should come here. I got screaming bulls. So we're like, we'll be there.
Yeah.
We go back to camp, literally just pick our crap up, and we just put it out.
The truck.
Threw it in the truck and took off.
Yeah. And then slept at his house, crashed in his fifth wheel, which is, Clint had the best night.
I had the best night of
ever.
sleep the whole trip. Yeah,
I couldn't sleep. Where's the lick? Because I was like, it's not the dirt.
It's not the dirt, not my stinky tent.
Cushion.
Yeah, right.
We wake up in the morning and we decide we're gonna go in from the bottom. Like thermals are real consistent.
We talked about it the night before, but like what Hunter said was like the challenging part about hunting that spot is the thermals
because they're
coming in from
consistent.
The top.
Like you going from the top, they're sucking down in the morning, and those elk are moving down in the bottom. So you're chasing them downhill.
Yeah.
And if you can beat them, great, you're in the game. But if you can't, you're toast.
Yeah.
So we decided, let's go in from the bottom. We're going to go in early.
And his buddy had been in there shed hunting and stuff like that previously. And it was like, yeah, the bottom's nice.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
That guy's a liar.
Yep.
No, he's not.
I'm sure he's a great guy.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's a good personality.
Yeah.
And Hunter's never been in the bottom. So we park at this spot. And it's pitch black. And you have to drop down.
A clear cut.
Clear
cut. Yeah. With
That-
treetops and just garbage all over the place.
Yep. To the bottom to then work up the drainage. And I'm like sliding down this hill.
Yeah.
I think I used.
I slid some down.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sheer. It's like that stuff. It's like steep to where it's like you can't walk down it. You have to slide down it.
If you're listening to this and you're standing up, and you hold your arm out, you'd be touching the hill.
Yeah.
Probably with a bent arm.
Yes.
And it was awesome. Talk about adventure and cool. You got to go where the elk are.
Yep.
We get to the bottom and it is the jungle.
Like trees so close together, like you're bushwhacking.
You're swimming over bushes. And then we're 0.1 miles in, 0.1 of a mile in, 1/10 of a mile. And
It took us how long?
45 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we had to cross this creek and I stepped in a hole.
Went in over your boots.
Oh, my feet are soaked. And I knew I was in for a long day anyways. I was like, hey, I'm here. My
feet are already wet.
Oh, I'm toast. And we scoot up this drainage. We get to some clear areas.
I mean, it eventually kind of cleared up, but about the time we got to the spots where we could see without our headlamps, so we could now pick trails.
Yeah.
Because it was a thing, like none of us had ever been in there. So it's like, we didn't know, do you stay to the left or stay to the right? So when we came out, we stayed what would have been our right going in, and it was much clearer.
Yeah.
I mean, it still wasn't easy. It still wasn't pleasant, but it was way better than what we walked through to get there.
And the elk were silent. Mm-hmm. And we didn't hear a sound. And that's always defeating, especially from Hunter's point of view, where I got screaming bulls, come over here. I'll take
Right. Yeah, he felt bad. And I was like, dude,
Yeah.
you don't have to feel bad, man.
Yeah, we're elk hunting. Like,
Yeah.
it's just
It's the luck of the draw,
the
man.
way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah.
And so we get up onto this knob that has really.
There were two knobs he wanted to get to because there's like one. Well, there was three knobs he wanted to get to. One was the one where he had the encounters yesterday, and one was one where he knows there's a mega.
Yeah. And so we get to one of those and we start cow calling, nothing. And we're kind of walking. And
we're seeing beds. Like,
we're seeing big solitary beds, like not cow bedding, just solitary beds on what would be a bull bed. And then we start seeing this solitary bull track, big
Fresh.
bull track, fresh.
Like the dirt is fluffed up. Like
There's
it hasn't
dew
had
all
time
around
to
it.
fall.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's no dew in the track. So it was like, it had happened. And then we hit the wall of the elk scent. If you've elk hunted, you know that smell. You just hit it and you're like, oh man, there was an elk like here recently. So we start cow calling and then we just hear the bull. He didn't bugle or anything, but you could hear him just on the other side of this little cedar thicket that we were behind, walking back and forth. And I know he was trying to get our wind.
Mm-hmm.
You knocked an arrow. I dropped back and started cow calling, and he just was walking. I mean, I heard him pretty much the whole back and forth and back and forth.
I thought he was gonna pop out like any second.
And our wind kind of shifted. And it was coming straight down, and then it shifted across our face. It was coming across the knob. And as soon as I could feel the wind shift, it wasn't towards him, but as soon as it shifted sideways in my head, I was like, the wind just moved. He's gonna try to get our wind.
And the funny thing was like, as you were thinking that, I literally turned to Hunter and I said, he's gonna go to our left to try to catch our wind.
Yeah, and there was a hole in our that was 30 yards. I ranged it, and I'm dropped back, and I was like, if he comes, I'm gonna shoot this out.
Yeah.
Because he's gonna circle you guys, and I'm gonna.
And that goes back to like what Hunter was saying, why he wanted us to come in, because it was like, if he would have had just another person with him where he was calling and had a person set up, like one of the two people was going to get a shot.
Yeah. So I knock an arrow, and I'm cow calling, real soft as I can go. And then silence.
Nothing.
I mean,
Vanished.
disappeared. And it's pretty, it's a cedar bottom, or it's like a pine bottom. So the forest floors.
Yeah, once he gets off that top, because where we heard him was on I shouldn't say the top, but like at the
Where that
crest of the
branches.
knob.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is where we could hear him, because that's where there was a bunch of like deadfall and like brush and stuff like that. He was moving back and forth, and that's
Yeah.
how we could hear him. As soon as he dropped down the other side, because he did go out to our left to try to catch our wind.
Yeah.
And
Whether
then
he got it or not.
yeah,
we'll
who
never know.
knows, But once he hits that like crest of going down into that drainage, it's all pine needles,
Yeah.
super soft and
Yep,
mossy,
spongy
yeah.
moss and
So he can be quiet as he wants to be once he hits that.
Yeah.
It's like not a problem.
yeah. And then
That was pretty much, we were like, went down to the next drainage, and then we kind of had a decision to make. It's like, do we go up the next one, right, and over to the next one, and then we're looking at our watch going like, we need to be back to the truck by like noon,
yeah.
so we could get back to your place, so I could start getting all my stuff organized and stuff like that, start getting packed and things like that to leave tomorrow morning. And all right, sorry gang, we're using some remote technology here that I got on my phone. It only lets me record an hour at a time, so we have to pick this back up. So we had to get back to your house to leave, so we had like a hard out that we were like, we got to leave. We got to start walking back out by 9:30, 10 o'clock. And at this point, it's like 9:15. So it's like, yeah, we can bop up to this next knob if we want to, but we're literally going to get to it and have to turn around and leave. And based on what we knew we had to walk through to get out, we were all kind of like, yeah, we probably should just start heading out. So that was the end of the hunt. Wasn't the end of the adventure, because we started picking our way back through. It wasn't so bad, like getting most of the way, because we actually used the stream this time, because
My
your feet were already wet.
I just walked the stream. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm just going for it.
But there were places in the stream that were pinched down and choked down so tight.
Well, there's a beaver in there that was
Yeah.
just tossing logs like he was a lumberjack.
Yeah, it was just, that was miserable, right? And then we got out of the stream and we had to do some bushwhacking a little bit. Like it was relatively open once we got off the stream. It was so hard getting in and out of the stream because it was all like growing up around the stream. But once we got out of that, then we actually had some like clear-ish walking, but we still had like, I don't know. I remember I checked at one point, we had been walking for like a little while, and I checked at one point, I was like, man, we still got another mile to go, and we haven't even hit the worst stuff yet.
No.
So we hit like this patch that we have to bushwhack through for however long it is. I forget. I mean, it was much shorter than it was this morning, but it still was not great.
Yeah.
But then the worst part is like once you go to get out, it is like it couldn't get any closer to rock climbing vertical.
Yeah, it's rock climbing on dirt.
On dirt. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's strap the bows to your pack, get on your hands and knees, and start crawling and climbing, right? And don't lean back, because if you lean back and your pack weight takes you over, you're not stopping till you hit the bottom.
See ya.
Yeah. And so we're army crawling up this thing, right? We get up, to a certain point, you take a break. You get up to a certain point, you take a break. And we're going one at a time so people get runway.
Yeah.
Because if the guy in front of you falls,
He's taking everybody out. Like
everyone below him's going too.
Yeah.
So we're trying to give each other space. That way, we don't cause a catastrophe and we're all in at the bottom dead, At least if one of us gets out, someone can get some help or whatever. And so we crawl and we finally get out of that rock climbing part. And so now we're in this quagmire of a clear cut that we're trying to pick our way through. And it's also like almost vertical, like trying to get out of that. And as we crest this one spot, so remember, we walked down in the dark.
Yeah, no, we can't see anything.
And there's a big drainage that runs in between these like two clear cuts, essentially.
Yeah.
Right. And Wilson and I are coming up the left side as we're looking at it on our way out. And on our right side, which is how we came in, we look over, and it is a straight up like rock cliff face wall.
Oh, yeah.
That we basically walked. We're looking at our track on our phone.
Well, and you could see our slide marks down the side. Like I slid on my side for like 15 feet.
Yeah. We basically were a foot away from that rock face, that if one of us would have tripped on a piece of like clear cut debris, a log, or one of those branches that gets stuck in like under your pant leg, you know what I mean, and trips you or whatever. Like you're taking like an 80-foot tumble to the bottom of that thing. And it was just one of those things where we looked at it, we're all kind of laughing, partially because we're like, man, that was really stupid. Like
so dumb.
Like I don't know how one of us didn't get hurt.
Hunter was like, I didn't see that this morning. I was like, none of us saw that.
None of us saw that, because if I had seen it, there's no way I would have went down there.
And when you go someplace in the darks that you haven't been, you just pick a spot and you just commit. You're like, this is the way we're going.
Yep.
And if I would have just decided to go 1.5 feet or 2 feet to the right, I'm a pretty committed guy. I would have just committed myself right off
right off the cliff. Yeah, exactly. So we finally get to the top, and the hunt's over, and we're kind of like lamenting the climb out, because it was just that was the nastiest climb out of a hole that I've ever had. That was just terrible.
Yeah.
I can't think of one that's been worse.
No. Yep, we were sitting at the truck in a bull bugles.
And we all just kind of look at each other. We're like, yep.
Yep.
So that's just the way it done it. He didn't just bugle once.
Yeah, because I grabbed my bugle tube out of the truck and I just ripped one at him and he ripped right back at me. And I was like, you win.
You win, buddy. It was probably not far from where we're at either.
No.
To be honest.
No, it was, yeah, obviously the hope is, especially like, and we've talked about this, when you come out,
yeah,
I want you to kill an elk, I've never even killed an elk. I want you to kill an elk way more than I want to kill an elk. And, but yeah, we were in them. I learned a lot. Every time I go elk hunting, I learn something.
Yeah. Well, man, we had a bull bugle and we're, except for today, was the only day where I think it was the only day that we didn't chase a bugle, like chase an elk. You know what I mean?
Today we just got into his zone and
and we got on one. So
it was right time, right place.
Yeah.
Just that he wasn't feeling it.
Yeah. So it wasn't like we weren't like in the game. It's like we were in the game pretty much every day. Yeah. It was just we just needed one of them to want to get fired up. Yeah. That's all we needed, you know? And we just couldn't find that dance partner this week for whatever reason. And it was kind of spotty. We heard that across the board from guys that we were talking to and stuff like that. Was that
this week it cooled off real.
It would flip on for like a hot minute, because like yesterday, Hunter was in that spot yesterday and he was like,
screaming.
Dude, it was going bananas. He's like, I've never, hard pressed to think of another day that I've had like that, where it was just that chaotic for a couple hours or whatever. And then today, completely different story. Similar to when you're in the whitetail woods, man. It's like you're in the right spot with the hot doe. Boom, thing turns on for 24 hours and it's bananas, and then boom, you can go in the next day and it's like it never happened. You know? And it's like, so it's just, it's the same thing. But I mean, I had a blast still, dude.
Yeah,
I loved it. I always look forward to coming out here. I always look forward to spending time with you. Always enjoy meeting your buddies out here that I get to meet and like become friends with and stuff like that. We're gonna try to take Hunter hunting out into the plain states somewhere. Yeah. Because the Hunter's one of those Western dudes that boys ate up with some whitetails. Like he's just...
Which is rare out here. Like, there's not a lot of people out here. I've told people many times, like, I like hunting whitetails. They're like, why? You could just like go shoot one.
Right.
Like, well, yeah. That's why I like doing it.
Yeah. But yeah, we're going to try to get him to the plain states to do some whitetail hunting. He's good people. I'm glad I've met him. And look forward to sharing camp with him again in the future. And then always like spending time with you and your family, man. I appreciate you having me out here. And one of these days we're going to kill something together.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to happen.
Yeah. So anything else? Did we miss anything?
No, just, if you want to come elk hunting in Idaho, exercise and be happy with a fun adventure.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And hell, while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there too. And before I shut this thing down, we need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Osseo Gear, Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, and Genesee Beer. And until next time, we'll see y'all.